In my pajamas, obviously.
That said, let's see what's happening in the news today. A little bit of horror for virtual reality lovers like me and fans of Bioshock Rapture. If you've ever wanted to wander the city in immersive VR, now's your chance because we have a Bioshock mod for Half-Life Alyx, and it lets you return to Rapture. There's actually a few features and mechanics that have been tweaked to allow for this format, like how you use the in-game vending machines, for example, but it looks like a really solid fan-made attempt. So let's have a look at what the story says. All right, a new Bioshock-themed custom map for Half-Life Alyx lets you dive back under the sea and return to Rapture, and it's pretty great. It's been a while since I had last played Half-Life Alyx. Why? I can't honestly tell you, since the game is an absolutely outstanding experience. But then I heard there's a new mod in town for Alyx, and it involves Bioshock. So off to the Steam Workshop page for Half-Life Alyx I went, and lo and behold, there it was, Return to Rapture. So I think if you've got a VR headset, you want to pick one of these back up, you can do so. This was made by Steam user Wim Bytart, 1988. Return to Rapture is probably the most ambitious mod I've seen to date for Alyx. If you've played Bioshock, this will instantly feel very familiar to you. And just like in the original, you start out in the lighthouse, out in the ocean. After your planes crashed, you then proceed to make your way down an elevator in which charismatic social architect Andrew Ryan delivers his iconic introduction to Rapture. A city built underwater is a refuge from society for the healthy elites in a post-World War II world. And admittedly, Return to Rapture's intro isn't as pompous and impressive as Bioshock's. Personally, I think that's probably because of the VR limit. They couldn't quite make it as graphically intense, I guess. I don't know.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, and you're sort of limited by which headset users have. There's so many of them. I'm said it before. I'm a huge VR enthusiast, and I've taken a look at like most of the ones, with the exception of the super expensive ones on the market, which are like $5,000 or something like that, $6,000. I've tried all the like major VR headsets available right now. You don't always have hands in every VR game, so I'm glad to see it here because it does add a little extra to the immersion, and it lets you actually physically interact with some of these objects. So don't be fooled into thinking this mod doesn't look good, though. Yes, some areas are still visibly a work in progress and lack more refined details to more closely resemble its inspiration. But let me be clear, most of what you explore during your stay in this version of Rapture looks absolutely magnificent. Most rooms are packed with small, playful details and ideas, and screenshots, which I haven't put them all here, don't do Return to Rapture justice. So just like all VR games, you have to play it to fully experience it. So there you go. I'm probably going to be giving this one a shot. Anybody else who's got a headset, if it's compatible. I mean, you'll probably be definitely with the Steam VR thing. Probably with Oculus, you'll be compatible. Most stuff on Steam is compatible with the Oculus if you're interested. So yeah. They've tweaked some of the in-game functions. The vitality chambers from Bioshock work the way that they're meant to in the original, though they include like an extra layer of multi-tool puzzle solving to unlock, and audio diaries. You'll be required to insert like a floppy disk into a machine to listen to it. Like, I guess there's the machine, and he's got the floppy in his hand there in the leftmost picture, and he's got to pop that into the machine to listen. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And there's what they mentioned about vending machines. There's like a creative take on that. They've added like a waste disposal function. So if you put any kind of junk that you're carrying in your inventory in, you get back weapon upgrades or weapon upgrade ingredients or something like that. And you need to find an access card to literally swipe into the machine as well. So just little details, like just bullshit details like that I really like. And it's all the news I have tonight. So moving on. Let's get to talking about some horror tropes tonight. We're going to talk about terror tropes, a town with a dark secret.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Usually like all my favorite films or games or stuff like that have some kind of, I love like haunted town or haunted houses, just locations that are creepy, filled with creepy people. That's a screenshot from Innsmouth from Call of Cthulhu, Dark Corners of the Earth. In case you were wondering, which is a quintessential example of a town with a dark secret. But let's actually find out. Yeah, let's actually find out what this trope specifically involves. There you go. And tropes are defined as the use of figurative language via word, phrase, or image for artistic effect, such as using a figure of speech or something more colorful to define a common element. And there you go. Tonight's trope is Town with a Dark Secret. We've all seen horror movies built on it, so let's read all about it. Everybody in a small town is in on a secret, a terrible secret that nobody outside town must know. The visiting protagonist slowly begins to suspect that something's wrong. Such towns are often located in Lovecraft country. If the terrible secret is covered with a sweet veneer, see Stepford Suburbia and Uncanny Village. If it's big enough, say a country or more, then you have yourself an empire with a dark secret. Also note that the secret doesn't have to be supernatural. It can be something as mundane as a murder cover-up. A wrong genre savvy character might take it for a close-knit community or vice versa, while a subverted sitcom set in a small town might do the same for the audience. Sister trope of small town big hell, which is this trope but played for drama instead of for horror. So very common trope, especially building on a horror story. You probably, what's like your favorite, are you like big into sort of the exploitation stuff, or what kind of genre do you like? What kind of tropes?
I like all kinds of horror, really, like as a genre. Like, are you talking about my favorite example of this particular trope?
It could be that, or it could be just whatever tropes. You know, earlier I said that I'm into like the buddy kid horror movies, and now the town with a dark secret. So I'm just wondering if you've got any sort of specifics that you're into.
I very much like the World Eaters that we talked about previously. You know, the
Oh
Devourers
yeah,
of Planet,
yeah.
that kind of thing. I think that's really cool. I do actually kind of like the Town with a Secret, especially when like it's a really, really fucked up secret. You know,
Yeah.
especially when it's not obvious from the get-go. You know what I mean? Like when you go to Innsmouth, you kind of know that everything's really weird and fishy, if you know what I mean. You know, but I think it can be a really good trope. This, like, it can be a really you know, disturbing trope. Like, I mean, you can say things like the Wicker Man and stuff like that are literally this. You know what I
Oh,
mean? Where
that's
the
true.
entire town is in on it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Very quickly, my favorite take on this trope is an English legend called Crom Cruach.
Hmm.
It's basically about a village that burned with everyone inside it while they were worshipping this devil.
Oh,
It gave them bountiful crops in exchange for killing their children and sacrificing their children. Um, and as a result, there were rarely any children in the village.
I was gonna
They
ask,
had
how
to.
did they propagate themselves then?
They didn't. It was only a short-term plan, I guess. Was the
Wow.
plan. But one year he decides to kill all of them anyway because he's an asshole and he burns them all to death. And in the legend, it materializes like every 10 years and lures new people in basically to burn with them
That's fucking
every single
awesome.
time. Yeah.
Jeez, you ought to do like a lore thing on that or something. One of the cryptid type things. That actually sounds really cool.
Yeah. I think it means like it means like twisted or humpback. I think that's the name of the devil. I think that's what that translates to. I think it's like Gaelic or something.
That's really neat. You got like an entire town full of a legend. That's awesome. I just had to contend with like lame old like Bloody Mary and shit. Nobody, I didn't have a cool town urban legend. Yeah. So yeah, here you go. There's some more the most popular classics of modern horror. You mentioned Wicker Man. There it is.
Mhm.
Yeah. We're built on this trope, with this trope factoring into like each story, I think, pretty heavily. For example, Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness, with Sam Neill having to escape a beautiful Hobbs End. I fucking love In the Mouth of Madness, by the way. It's one of my favorite movies. Have you seen it?
I have not actually.
Really? Oh man, big recommend. Sam Neill is using his like amazing breakdown actor chops. He's great when he's freaking the fuck out to
I
11.
love him in Event Horizon.
Yeah, he's like that, but a good guy. You know, that
Okay.
level of panic. It's a yeah, it's a great movie. I'd really it's basically about him being a private detective, a PI that has to track down a missing author, and the author is very much likened to a Stephen Kingian type of person, except that his writing has completely overtaken everybody in this town in Hobbs End and has corrupted it to such a level that we no longer know what was originally there or what he just wrote in with his eldritch powers. It's a really good movie. And yeah, Sam Neill has his usual mental breakdown in it. Then we've got something like Halloween that has Haddonfield and Michael. And Freddy gave us Elm Street, both being cases where the town isn't really weird by its own devices or like its own choice. It's under the effect from Michael or from Freddy or whoever the fuck. And all the strangeness is like a defensive response to being home field for some of these psychos, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I grew up with a lot of these slashers. Did you have a favorite slasher? Did you?
I've always been like, I guess I always like. I found Michael Myers the most genuinely scary slasher, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite slasher series is Sleepaway Camp.
Oh yeah,
Uh, but I like I mean I think in terms of like personality, I always found Freddy quite fun. He's such a
yeah.
lovable pedophile, you know.
It's so it's so hard to think about. Fuck, he is, isn't he? I mean, they really played it down for like the
The
early
later
the
films,
original. Yeah, but they
The
brought up
remake,
the
it's
remake is
brought
like
up more, right?
right there. It's like, yeah, no, Nancy straight up got molested by him.
Yeah.
As far as the remake is concerned. So yeah, Chernobyl Diaries. Have you seen?
I have seen. I've actually like been to the Red Forest around Chernobyl,
I want to
like.
go so bad one day. I'm
uh,
jealous.
but yeah, Chernobyl Diaries. It's actually not a bad film. Actually, I don't mind that. It's not too bad.
It was just fun, but like all I can remember is like they're running from radiation mutants, right? And they run all the way to like where the elephant's foot is in Chernobyl. You know the elephant's foot
Hmm.
at Chernobyl, and they're fucking melting by the time they get there. And it's like, oh hey, we're safe now. The mutants are gone. What? You're gonna die. Like
Yeah.
once you make it all the way to, they're practically standing
But they
next
run
to it.
around like in the reactor at the time, and like
Yeah.
they do, right?
Yeah, and
Jesus.
like you watch their faces slowly melt and
Yeah.
start to peel away and shit with radiation poisoning and stuff. But they're like, yeah, we're gonna be okay now. They lost us. It's, I don't know. Seemed like a little bit tone deaf, and somebody didn't really think the radiation through completely for that movie. I don't know.
I don't think the whole movie is that well thought out, but it's all right. It's an all right movie. It's
Yeah,
okay.
I had fun with it. Honestly,
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun with it. And then we've got Children of the Corn. We've got Gatlin, the town of
Mhm.
Gatlin, where adults get murdered, and you get to toil the fields with like your fellow underage wife before you both throw yourselves into a bonfire when you hit 18. So that's a great town.
Population control.
Yeah, it kind of low key reminds me of you play Fallout 3.
Yeah, play Fallout 3.
Yeah. Do you remember that town with all the kids that would like exile other kids when they turned
Oh
18?
yeah,
Yeah.
like underground. It's like
Yeah.
Lamplight. It's called or something like that. Yeah.
Lamplight. Yeah, that's it. That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah, that's kind of what it low key reminded me of. And that yeah, The Wicker Man is a classic, cult classic for a reason.
Not the remake, the original.
Oh no, I was
We don't
talking
talk
about
about the remake.
Nicolas Cage version
Nicolas Cage.
actually. Yeah, no, no, no.
Right. The Nicolas Cage version is the best version. Sorry, my
Yeah,
bad.
excuse me. All right, look, despite I know the desperate mounting doom of the finale in the original, it just doesn't hold a candle to Not the Bees. Okay, it's the original is amazing.
The
I do
ending
love
in the
it.
original when they're all singing happily as the flames like higher is like one of the best scenes in a horror movie. It's just great. It's just the whole film's great. Like it just feels. I watched it very recently. It feels really off the whole film. You know, the whole time. I mean, I must admit, like I guess like if it wasn't for the burning him alive, I'd probably like be sympathetic to the villagers for the most part, if I'm honest with you, because he's like really uptight. Like he's so tightly wound the entire time, and like I wonder how a '70s audience would have viewed him. You know what I mean? In particular,
Probably
I
as a
don't know.
square, you know.
Yeah.
He feels like a square by those standards, really, because when you've got like a hot naked blonde chick literally playing the like bongos on your bedroom
On your
wall,
door, and
on
he's
your
like, "Nah,
door.
that's not pass."
Nah, I'm good. Don't feel like it today, thanks. Yeah, it's I think he would have been thought to be uncool or square. Sure.
I watched the director's cut actually for the first time, and there was so much extra sex than I remember there being. They're just like fucking in the streets and stuff in the director's cut. Yeah.
I have not seen. I would have remembered that. I obviously
Yeah.
haven't seen the
There's
director's
like a
cut.
bit where a woman's like grinding on a tombstone, like completely
Oh
naked, like having
yeah.
a great time
Well,
in the
good for
churchyard.
you, honey. Good for you. Oh my God. Yeah, okay, and obviously when it comes to this this particular trope, I'm gonna slip this right in here. Hello, Minx. Yeah, don't mind me. I'm never mentioned on the show. Very sad. Very sad. You know? Yeah, you can't really talk Crazy Town without Lovecraft. There's like no town darker with its fucked up fish banging secrets than the beautiful.
true.
Yeah, but beautiful Innsmouth, man. Proud progenitors of the Innsmouth taint. It's like a local. Sorry, go
I think
ahead.
it's like the one that's inspired the most other things. Like there's so many reference to it. Like there's a quest in Oblivion that's based around it. There's loads of like loads of games reference Shadow over Innsmouth in
Yeah.
some way. You know what I mean? It's like it's in some ways like I know people meme about Cthulhu, but I think in some ways Shadow over Innsmouth is probably his most like recycled story in terms of other people taking it and using it. You know?
Right, right, right. Yeah, usually I see the same references being made, so I think you're right about that. Okay, so everybody in Innsmouth has got the Innsmouth taint, and that's because everybody in Innsmouth subscribes to, I don't know, Dagon's OnlyFans or something like that. Daddy Dagon gets his loyal followers gold and jewels and prosperity and a one-way ticket to Rylea once they're fully mutated into deep ones. So Innsmouth is a given, or Mboka, if you prefer. If you watched the live-action Dagon, which is another movie that I really like, based off that idea. And I wanted to look at a few different examples of this trope aside from these more common elements. There are a few horror anime, for example, where this does factor in. Have you watched, for example, Another? This was another one I rewatched.
I have. I love Another.
I love Another too.
It taught me to be really careful with umbrellas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my god. Oh. For a second, I was like, "What?" Oh. Oh, yeah. So yeah, I recently rewatched it all. To be fair, the strangeness, I guess, in that anime is more contained to a classroom in the town
Yes.
of Another. Yeah.
It's a good little show though.
Oh yeah, it's great. I'm not going to spoil the show. I'll just say the students are forced into a kind of fucked up, gory, very much supernatural force of final destination type situation if they don't adhere to a particularly cruel rule every time a new student joins in the class. And the main character of Another is a boy named Koichi Sakibara. Sakakibara. I'm so sorry.
That's quite a big last name there. Sakakibara.
Oh, Sakakibara, there you go. Who's just transferred, who's the newest transfer kid in class. And it's about his like slow unraveling of why the students are trapped by this awful choice that they must make, and what it entails and how it's related to a strange girl that everyone in class ignores, the girl with the eye patch here. It's an intriguing and it's sort of sad even little horror anime. So that's another recommend. So while we're on the subject actually of anime and manga, I'm just gonna throw in an honorable.
Berserk?
We could
Oh my God,
Berserk. Well, that's not Berserk.
Sorry,
This is no, it's okay. Everybody, well, Berserk is like the entire planet is afflicted by this trope. Berserk.
Berserk.
Delicious. Should make anime based cakes, and you could call the Berserk one Berserk.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I know.
You've got a future career now in baking.
I do. All right, so there's the honorable mention, the town of Kurozucho, the little seaside town of Ito's Uzumaki, under the curse of a spiraling snake god and destined to return to its root over and over and over again. It's a fun place. I'm looking forward to the upcoming Uzumaki new animated series.
Yeah, for sure. Have you played World of Horror, by the way? That's got the
Yes.
towns based on this one, obviously.
I have to a minimal degree because I want to play. It's still in early access, I believe, isn't it?
They've added quite a lot. There's like quite a few different stories now, but yeah.
Yeah, I've been trying to. I hate making the mistake of playing something like a little too early, and then they're still like a chapter off or whatever.
I hate that.
Yeah,
I hate it so much as well. I like to think the game to be finished. It's a bit different for this because it is like chapter based, so you can like play the chapters. You know what I mean? Like there's finished stories. You know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, fair enough. I think I've got it. Yeah, I do have it in my library, so I'll give it a shot anyway.
There's like 10 complete plots in the game now, I would say.
Oh, nice. For a very solid film example, here's a very solid film example for you. See 2005's 2001 Maniacs. And
I have seen this one, yes.
Oh yeah, I love this movie.
There's a movie called Inbred that is basically the British version of this, and it's so fucked. Like, I know this one's fucked as well, but Inbred, just minor spoilers, one of the ways a character dies is they are force-fed feces until their stomach bursts from the inside with a poo like pump.
Oh my god, just stab me. What the fuck?
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah, it's basically the same movie, just set in England instead.
What is it called? I'm gonna write it. What's it called?
Inbred.
Inbred. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm a big fan of this sort of dark comedy, tongue-in-cheek, violent horror stuff. So
Yeah.
and this is a horror comedy movie, I think. And by the way, you could watch. There is a 1964 original film that you can also watch called 2000 Maniacs, but then you'd miss Robert Englund by way of Pirate Colonel Sanders, and that would be wrong. You have to watch this movie for Robert Englund. It's a great role, actually. It felt almost as iconic in terms of like what he did with it as the personality he kind of breathed into Freddy.
He does that type of role well.
Yeah, he's very charismatic and he's very out there, and it's a lot of fun to watch him. And in this, he really takes it up to like 11. So yeah, 2001 Maniacs. If you haven't seen it, check that out. And what are we talking about here in terms of the story? There you go. Pleasant Valley is basically an idyllic Georgia town that is super into American Civil War reenactments.
Hmm.
But that's because it's a literal ghost town filled with literal ghosts, literally fucking up anyone coming through that smells even a whiff of Northern Confederate, by the way, not Canadians. Although I don't know what would happen if you came through and you were Canadian and just like incredibly polite. Honestly, you might stand a shot with these people because they didn't
Yeah.
really start fucking anybody.
Just as long as you're not, as long as you're white, you'll be fine. I'm from Canada.
And not from the north, from the American north, then you'll
Yeah.
be all right. Yeah, Pleasant Valley has a bit of a chip on its shoulder dating back to the American Civil War, during which all of its like 2001 residents were raped and murdered. Well, not all of them were. Everybody got diddly ordered really horribly. And now
Yes.
expect payment. Now they want revenge in the form of like killing an equal 2001 northern people to like even the score, and they're gonna penny and dime that shit with each and every unfortunate asshole that passes by. You want to take a wild guess where the entry point is?
Yeah. I remember the sex scene from this one, like the sex death
Yeah,
of
the one with
yeah,
the milkmaid.
yeah,
I think it's the girl on the right, actually. Maybe
yeah.
on top, at the top there, was the character in that. Yeah, it had some pretty. It's pretty raunchy. It's a pretty raunchy movie.
It's pretty graphic as well,
It's pretty.
like
Yeah,
viscerally.
yeah. So yeah, if you like gory horror comedy, check it out. And again, it's very raunchy if you're into that. Just overall a fun little time. You have some drinks, smoke some smoke, and watch 2001 Maniacs. And that is the trope segment, and a peek into some fucked up towns you wouldn't want to visit, or I don't know, maybe you would. Now, next up on the show, we have censorship in relation to, oh, I know,
Censorship.
censorship in relation to horror, which is nothing new. You know, every form gets some panties in a twist. You get knee-jerk film hysteria, satanic gaming panics, EC comics corrupting your young children. Although I did grow up reading EC. To be fair, I grew up reading EC comics, and I did want the Crypt Keeper to be my boyfriend when I was younger. So maybe the grooming does work. I don't know.
That's fine. I used to watch the cartoon before I saw the main stuff. You
Oh,
know.
oh yeah, same. I collect the comics now, the originals,
Oh,
some of
that's
the
cool.
rare stuff. Yeah. Okay, so tonight Minx is going to focus on such social impact by way of UK's video nasties films that engaged that trigger button of offense and what that
Okay.
meant. So go for it.
So, obviously, if some of you guys are all like Zoomers, so you won't be aware there was once a format called VHS, and we used to watch our movies on these cassette tapes. Um, and this was the cause of the video nasty scare. We'll start by reading what's on screen here. Video nasty is a colloquial term popularized by the National Viewers and Listeners Association in the United Kingdom to refer to a number of films, typically low budget horror and exploitation films, distributed on videocassette that were criticized for their violent content by the press, social commentators, and various religious organizations in the early 1980s. These video releases were not bought before the British Board of Film Classification due to a loophole in film classification laws that allowed videos to bypass the review process. The resulting uncensored video releases led to a public debate concerning the availability of these films to children due to the unregulated nature of the market. So essentially, these films never got rated by our ratings board, who give films, age restrictions, the BBFC. And as a result, there were lots of corner video shops selling some of these films completely uncut. And some of them, I would say barely any of them, but some of them had some pretty disturbing content. Very few that hold up today as disturbing content, but still, nonetheless, in the 80s, this would have been considered extremely disturbing content. And essentially it caused, I'm not entirely sure if it caused a public outcry or more the fact that the politicians wanted to make it appear like it caused a public outcry. I don't think most people really gave much of a fuck about this, but politicians made it their business to give a fuck about this, essentially.
Yeah, in the same vein, to try to weaponize it to help their campaigns or tear down their competitors, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so the way they decided to deal with this, until they eventually passed laws so videos had to be reviewed by the BBFC as well. But the interim solution they decided to go for was referring to a law in the UK called the Obscene Publications Act.
Mhm.
Um, and basically, what they did was they reviewed each movie that they felt might be too adult under the Obscene Publications Act. And if they found it met certain criteria that were classified as obscene, they then tried to prosecute the film, which essentially meant that if you were selling it, if you were, making it available, that kind of thing, you could go to jail, okay, or be
Oof.
fined heavily and things like that. So they decided to start going through films, but they didn't really know which films were bad and which films weren't. So a lot of the films they picked were literally at random based on the cover art of the video, or they picked some of them based on the title, anything. They didn't really know anything about most of these films, so a lot of films that aren't particularly offensive were like thrown in, and a lot of fairly mainstream films as well were thrown in as well, and it was just a bit of a mess. There were 72 films that they went through as a result of this, but 39 films out of the 72 were the ones that were successfully prosecuted. So we call the overall list uh like the main the DPP list of video nasties, but only the initial 39 that were prosecuted are the true video nasties, you know what I mean? They've actually since become quite collector's items, like having a full collection of video nasties is something some people probably have strived for, you know?
Oh, for sure,
Um
yeah. There's some people super into it on like YouTube and stuff like that. I
Oh,
was, yeah,
for sure. And regardless, I'm going to briefly go through the 39 films very quickly because
yeah,
most of
go
them are
for it.
terrible. But these were the films that were prosecuted. I'll do them in alphabetical order because Wikipedia lists it that way, and it's way easier for me to keep track of it. We have Absurd, which apparently is also known as Monster Hunter, Anthropophagus 2, and Horrible. Um, it's I don't actually. It's one of the few films on the list that I'm not actually that familiar with. I don't think I've ever seen it. It's an Italian slasher film. It's it's fairly mild, like in terms of like yellow, jello tropes and things like that. It's nothing super bad. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Just a fairly generic slasher film. Nothing amazing. Just unremarkable. The next one was Anthropophagus the Beast. Now, this one I want to talk about a little bit because this is a film that everyone should watch just because it's really fucking terrible.
All right, let's hear it.
Basically, it's set on a Greek island, and a bunch of tourists end up on this island, and everyone is gone. Like, everyone's gone from this island, and there's one guy left who is like this crazed, blood fueled lunatic, basically. And the scene that caused all the drama and was like that caused it to be focused on. There's a scene later on in the movie where a pregnant woman, one of the tourists, is pushed to the ground by him. He then cuts her stomach open,
Oh my
takes
god.
out her fetus, and eats it. But it is actually a rabbit fetus, and he's chewing on this rabbit fetus,
Why was
like
he
in the
hungry?
movie.
Was he
I, I,
hungry
I
in the
guess I guess
movie?
he's I guess it's meant to be a human fetus, but like in the film, he's chewing on the fetus, like
Oh
nom
my
nom nom
god.
nom. It also features some of the worst special effects in terms of dismemberment I've ever seen. Like, it's just I can't really describe it, but there's like sequences where people have their heads cut off, and then the heads are clearly just mannequin heads, vaguely painted to look like their actual heads,
That's
and things like
beautiful.
that.
You've
It's
sold
it's
me on
so
watching
bad.
this. You've sold
It's
me on
so bad.
seeing
It's
this.
free on YouTube. It's I think it's public domain. It's just a complete train wreck.
Oh god, I
Um,
hope it's public domain.
um, is another one that was like it's like a Lizzie Borden story. It's not. It's just boring,
Mm.
if I'm honest with you. A Bay of Blood, another Italian movie. Most of basically, by the way, almost all these movies, with a few exceptions, are now released fully uncut in the UK,
Nice.
not prosecuted anymore. The Beast in Heat is one of the ones that wasn't re-released in the UK. This one is a Nazi exploitation film where they basically inject this guy with like super hormones and make him into like a big hairy rape machine. Is the best way I can describe it. And and then they just like throw women at him, and that's the
Oh,
movie. That's just I just summed up the plot really there.
you just gave me
Uh,
such a fucking weird visual image. Oh fuck.
it's something. It's something. Uh, Blood Feast, which is particularly of actually, I need to make sure this is the right one. I've got to make sure this is the right one
Sure.
before I because there's lots of films with blood in the title here.
I'm
Okay,
shocked.
Blood Feast is again just is a fairly boring film. It's just like there's like a scene of cannibalism in it, but nothing remarkable. We're gonna move on. Blood Rights, however, also known as the Ghastly Ones, is worth of note just because you can hear the director shouting instructions at the cast throughout the entire movie because they never bothered editing it out. It's a nothing burger film, but it is watching just to laugh at that in particular.
But do you
It's
see
very,
the
very fun.
boom mics snaking into
You
the
do,
shot?
you do
Yes.
actually, you do at some points.
Yes.
It's pretty funny. Bloody Moon, again, a bit of a nothing burger. The Burning is probably one of the more recognizable films on the list. You know The Burning?
No. What's that
It
about?
is it's an American slasher film. It's about a guy with a pair of scissors who goes around killing a bunch of people at a summer camp. He's getting revenge because when he was the janitor there, he was burned alive by a bunch of delinquent children, and he's getting revenge. It's got the only reason it's included is there's one scene where he shoves a pair of scissors like through somebody's head, and it was considered like a super shocking sequence at the time. But yeah,
Yeah, this
uh,
just looking at the cover art here, I just looked it up on IMDb and it's from 81. I was going to say that is the most 80s cover art for a film I've ever seen. That might as well be they might as well be floating in Camp Crystal Lake having sex in the lake with like
yeah.
Jason standing over them. I'm looking at this poster. It's great.
The killer is called Cropsy. It was an attempt to make like a mascot. It's not actually a bad film,
Cropsy.
actually.
That
Yeah,
sounds
it's not a
familiar.
bad film. Like it's all right. Like it's all right.
I think I've heard reference to Cropsy, but I haven't seen the film. That's weird. Hmm.
Cannibal Apocalypse. It's just
Hell.
a standard cannibal film.
Yeah.
Cannibal Ferox.
Hmm.
Again, the main reason these films were included were for the covers and also for the animal cruelty, which is still illegal here, by the way. So you can't show animal cruelty in the movies. Cannibal Holocaust. Again, we've already talked about that at length
Yeah.
on the show, but again, that is probably one of the only ones on the list that I feel is like maybe not deserved, but I can see why the reaction was so visceral to it. Let's put it that way at the time. Because it does have a lot of animals being brutally murdered, like horrifically on screen. Not murdered, but killed horrifically
Yeah.
on screen. It's pretty unpleasant. Like things like the turtle scene and stuff like that are very unpleasant. And yeah. We have The Cannibal Man, which isn't actually a film about a cannibal man, which I find always very interesting. It's just a film like about a killer. It contains absolutely no scenes of cannibalism whatsoever.
No,
It's just a
I was
slasher
gonna
film.
say, where does the cannibalism fall into
There's
this?
no cannibalism. A
Oh.
lot of these films had like stupid things as well. Devil Hunter, which is an actual cannibal film.
Huh.
It's like a Mondo sort of thing about cannibals. Don't Go Into the Woods, fairly generic American slasher film from 1991. Driller Killer. This is a very
Oh, I've
infamous
seen
one.
I've seen Driller Killer.
It's such a boring fucking film. Holy
Okay.
shit.
Yeah.
But there's the one scene where the guy drills the head, and that was the front cover of the VHS, sorry, was like the killer drilling a drill into a guy's brain. And that was like, it's in
Yeah, you
public domain
expect
now,
me
that
to
film.
not rent that at Blockbuster if I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Evil Speak, which is a fairly well-known film, I believe. Evil Speak, right? Like it's about the
Yeah.
cursed video game sort of thing, the arcade or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like a military video game, and it like you play it, and things like play out in real life, right? Is that? I actually don't know it well enough to
I know
pass on it, but, yeah.
I saw it when I was a kid, and I may be confusing, but I think you're right. I may be confusing it with a different one though. I don't know. Yeah.
Expose, just a slasher. Faces of Death. Okay, so this one's important. We mentioned this
Yep.
at length already when we talked about Mondo movies, but
Mhm.
Faces of Death was actually played to UK politicians in Parliament. And there were like videos of them like staggering out, like, oh my god, I can't believe all this shit's happening. Like, I can't believe I witnessed this. This was horrific. I
Wow.
can't believe it. And like they were just like freaking out basically over it. And it's if you watch it now, it's pretty funny, to be honest with you, like to see it. Like because obviously most of the stuff in Face of Death isn't real. It's faked, and most of the stuff that is real isn't that bad. Like I would say like the plane going down for real's pretty bad, but most of it's like fairly tame.
I didn't find it really disturbing. Like the last movie of this sort that I found disturbing was a Serbian film, but like Faces of Death didn't really do much I thought it was quite mild by comparison.
It is, yeah. Like that Serbian film was a film that is heavily edited here in this country. Very quickly moving on, we got Fight for Your Life. It's just an exploitation film. Quentin Tarantino was like heavily inspired by it. We got Andy Warhol's Frankenstein, by the way, which
Saw
is
that, yeah.
which
Saw
is
that one.
fine. I don't know how it's on the list. It's whatever. Toxic Zombies, which is known by a cavalcade of names. It's just a terrible zombie movie. But the thing that's key about it is it's zombies that live in weed fields. And it's like killing hippies. The zombies kill hippies because they're spraying like the weed with like a special drug, and it makes people into zombies. That's it. A special like chemical, sorry.
Yeah,
to,
but then
like,
you get to
preserve it.
hang out in the fields and you keep smoking the weed. That's like a
Yes.
win-win situation. I don't know.
Forever smoking
Yeah,
the weed.
forever. You don't eat flesh. You smoke weed as a weed zombie. So.
Next up, Gestapo's Last Orgy, another one that is still banned. It is another Nartsploitation film. It's
What? No.
Yeah, there's like there's a key scene in this where a woman is lowered into a box full of flesh-eating rats, and they didn't have any rats, so they used gerbils instead. It's one of the funniest fucking things I've ever seen. Um, they
Gerbil
make
bit.
a stew out of Jewish children at one point in the
Of
movie and
course
things like
they
that.
do. Of course they do.
It's fucking crazy shit. But I get it's still banned. It's of note, I guess, though, just for being utterly bizarre. The House by the Cemetery is another slasher film, a very generic American slasher film, nothing to go home about. The House on the Edge of the Park. Wow, another unique title there. Is the same thing pretty much. Number 26, we're nearly done, by the way. I Spit on Your Grave.
Yep.
A film that I can understand potentially being on the list more than any of the others apart from Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah.
It had 7 minutes and 2 seconds cut, even when it was re-released. And it is now it's down to 1 minute and 41 seconds removed in its current 2021 iteration here. You cannot in the UK, if you want to submit it for like VHS rating and things like that, you can't cinema or DVD rating these days, but you know what I mean. You cannot glorify rape. Okay, and the argument is there's a lengthy rape scene at the start of this movie that just goes on and on. It's very horrible, I will say. Like you cannot glorify it. And they count that as glorifying it, I guess, for whatever reason. And even though everyone that does it gets butchered later on.
Maybe it's the length of
regardless,
the time, really.
it is long. It is like it's
of the
very
rape scene. I
uncomfortable.
mean, yeah,
Yeah,
and maybe that's like if you feature it like too long with too much detail, then maybe that's why. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, another very infamous one next that you probably haven't heard of, but I'll tell you about briefly because it's really interesting.
Okay.
Island of Death is the name of the film. I think it's called Devils in Mykonos is like the other name it's known by.
Definitely don't know that one.
It's a Greek island. This couple go to an island. Basically just go to have a fucking honeymoon sex orgy, I guess is the best way of putting it, but they do kill
What
it.
the fuck?
They kill people and crucify them. They get like this artist and drown him in paint at one point. They're invited to a gay wedding and they start shouting homophobic slurs and kill everyone there. It's really like over the fucking top. Like there's lots of like gay people getting killed in this movie, like a huge amount of it actually. And the twist at the end is that they're not actually married, they're brother and sister, and they've been having incestuous sex the whole time. And it's just like this fucked up orgy of sex, and the whole film is just like this cavalcade of sex and violence. It's actually available here uncut now. It's just ridiculous. It's one of the most ridiculous movies I've ever seen in my life.
You just gave me whiplash describing it. You're like, oh yeah, they just go on a nice little honeymoon on an island and then they fuck a goat. What?
Yeah. They fuck it really early on as well. The Last House on the Left is next. We've talked about this already. It's a horrible film. In terms of like the content.
Yeah.
It's uncut now, but it's still a very unpleasant film. It's not a nice watch. The actors like were really upset by being in it apparently as well. Like they were like really uncomfortable with the scenes that they filmed.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that was the. Sometimes I get them confused. That was the one with like the escaped convicts taking the two girls hostage, right?
Yeah, Wes
Yes.
Craven's
Okay,
first film actually. One of the remaining banned ones, Love Camp 7. It's another Nartsploitation rape fest. Been banned again in 2020 when it was resubmitted for rating. Yeah, I don't know much about it. I've never seen it. Madhouse, which is I think a Toby Hooper film. I want to say that was released alongside Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah, it's from 1980. Yeah. Is it? I'm wrong. I'm very wrong. I'm getting confused. I'm getting confused with Funhouse. Sorry. Funhouse, Madhouse, whatever. This is an Italian film. It's another just, giallo type stuff, like exploitation type thing. I got Mardi Gras Massacre. It's just a slasher film, American slasher film. Nightmares in a Damaged Brain. I don't know much about this one. I don't think I've ever seen it. But apparently it's about a serial killer in New York mutilating strippers and stuff at peep shows and things like that. So,
as long as he's having fun. I mean, no.
He's having a great time.
He's having a great time.
Nearly done.
Hello,
Night of the Bloody Apes, which again, I haven't seen this, but the cover art looks amazing. it looks like the title might have been known as Sex with the Human Gorilla at some point.
Sex with the
Um,
human gorilla? Did they
yeah,
shave it?
I don't know. I don't know.
What the
Um,
fuck?
Night of the Demon, which has a fantastic sequence where a girl gets sexually assaulted by Bigfoot and then gives birth to Bigfoot babies. Always worth a watch.
Did they
Um,
come out like huge and hairy? Did she die at Bigfoot birth?
I can't remember. It's been a long time. We have Snuff, which is literally called Snuff, and it has no snuff in it, and is a fake snuff movie. A really bad
Clickbait.
fake snuff movie. It's at the end of the film, like there's a bit where the director runs up and pulls the intestines out of the only surviving character, like on camera, and he's like, "That's a wrap, guys," and it's like just awful. It's just like pigs in it, like being pulled out from under a shirt. Um, this Experiment Camp, which apparently is the only exploitation film here that has been released uncut here again. Never seen it. Tenebrae, which is a very great,
Yeah,
excellent Italian giallo, one of the best ones of the genre. Excellent stuff.
absolutely.
Um,
Yeah. Great movie.
the Werewolf and the Yeti, don't know that one, but sounds amazing. And finally, Zombie Flesh Eaters, which is known
Oh,
for its scene. I think this is the one. Yeah, this is the one which has a very famous scene where a girl is pulled forward by a zombie, and there's like a spike, like a wooden like jutting out thing on a
oh,
door, and her eye
slowly.
goes
Yeah.
slowly into the wooden thing, and it's like the whole thing is like a zoom in on her eye where it like impales through into her
Yeah,
brain.
just, oh my God.
Yeah. Beautiful film. It's actually a very good film.
It is,
I
yeah.
highly recommend it. So yeah, those were the ones that are prosecuted. I'm not going to go through all the rest because there's a lot, but those are the ones that prosecuted. And there's like two there, maybe three that I can understand why they were like, oh my god, at the time, you know, like, and nearly all of them are now, apart from like the nutsploitation ones, they're nearly all available now uncut, except for animal cruelty scenes.
I'm shocked that they didn't include like Ilse She-Wolf of the SS in the nutsploitation list.
I think they tried to persecute it, but it didn't make it. It was like it didn't prosecute.
It wasn't bad
It's
enough.
on the list, but it wasn't bad enough, I guess.
Okay.
So like, yeah, that was it basically. These films were prosecuted. There wasn't actually many incidents of like people being actually prosecuted for selling them afterwards. I believe there was like one or two cases where people were prosecuted.
Yep.
So in the end, it ultimately was for nothing, and they instituted a thing then when the BBFC would start rating films that were submitted for VHS release as well. So you know there was no need to do any of this shit in the end, and yeah. Nowadays, everything here is rated by the BBFC. In extreme cases, games are if they're like controversial as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't really tend to ban much stuff now. Like since then, like the number of things that the BBFC have cut since like the video nasty era is massively down. We're talking like maybe one every few years something comes up. We banned a few. They've banned a few games here as well, or censored a few games. I think there's only a few that are banned outright. But generally speaking, like they're a lot calmer than they used to be about various things.
Yeah, no more of that like ye old satanic panic kind of
Yes.
thinking, I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
But we will talk about the modern BBFC and British censorship, which is still fairly interesting next time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Next up, we have a little bit of lore coming your way. We talked about evil gods on the last show, so I wanted to take a closer look at one in particular. To date, there are a total of 11 movies in the Children of the Corn. Yeah, 11 fucking movies. I think I've seen every single one. I don't know. Yeah.
I've seen like one of them.
I was a huge fan of, I watched all kinds of trash before I developed a sense of taste when I was a kid, and I would see all the fucking 3,000 sequels, so yeah. So this is actually originally a short story by Stephen King. It was first published in the March 1977 issue of Penthouse. Fun fact, yeah, and later collected in King's 1978 collection Night Shift. The story is about a couple who end up in an abandoned Nebraska town that is inhabited by a cult of murderous children who worship a demon that lives in the local cornfields. Now, the story has been adapted into several films, spawning a horror feature film franchise of the same name beginning in 1984. And in 2009, the story was included in the book Stephen King Goes to the Movies. And a story about an evil deity who influences in the town of Gatlin all their children, specifically focusing on the kids. And before long, the influence of this deity, what the children end up calling He Who Walks Behind the Rose, results in a town-wide massacre that leaves everyone over the age of 18 dead. And actually, really, I love this opening sequence in the first movie, which began with this like mass poisoning in a cafe, and the kids locking all the doors and then fucking up everybody inside. It's pretty tame compared to like some of the like mass killing scenes you'll see in other movies by like today's standards. But it fucked me up real good when I was a kid. So it was a pretty
Do you
good.
have a favorite poisoning? Is this your favorite poisoning scene in a movie?
Oh my god. I can't think of one off the top. Yes, it is. So,
Mine is the one where they fail to do the poisoning properly in Battle Royale, and only the wrong person gets poisoned, and then it just
oh,
escalates into just a fucking machine gun bloodbath with
oh,
everyone
in the
dead.
lighthouse.
Yeah,
In
in
the
the
lighthouse.
lighthouse. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I love Battle Royale. Yeah, I love Battle Royale. It's great. I've read all the mangas and the movie, and
Oh, the manga is so fucked.
I know it's great. They have like a sequel manga for it, which is honestly like a really weird departure from the style and narrative of the first series. It's like a lot more childish looking. I don't know. But the original Battle Royale manga series, if you're into horror manga, that's like a big recommend. It was super like sad and emotional and shit too. Yeah. All right, so they worship this demon that lives in the local cornfield, and they kick off by killing every last adult, all their parents, their families, in the town of Gatlin. I think he who walks behind the rose actually isn't a god technically. I don't think that's actually correct now that I'm thinking about it. He's actually more of a demonic fertility spirit, and a bit of a nod to the Old Testament wrathful god. And depending on which film you're watching, he's out and out called the god of the Old Testament. Like idols created of him are even made to resemble pagan Jesus. They make little corn dollies like this. They make Jesus-shaped dolls from like corn husks and other stuff. So it's like more of a paganish approach to Christianity. He also has power based on like earthy forces. The cornfields around Gatlin are basically extensions of him. Like he can slit your throat with some corn. If you wander in there, he can move freely and quickly through it. Though in films, this kind of reminds me of the force moving through the woods in Evil Dead 2. Do you remember that? It's like zooming through the forest. You kind of see, yeah.
They do it in Evil Dead 1 as well, yeah.
Oh yeah. And that's the kind of point of view shot you get most times when someone's being chased in the cornfield, and you're supposed to assume it's he who walks behind the rose. And that's the kind of shot they give it, like in the Evil Dead. Fun fact, actually, this is actually a still from an upcoming Children of the Corn film. I'm not entirely sure when it's coming out. I kind of like what they've done here. I think the implication is like in the original film, the cult was led by a young preacher boy named Isaac Kroner, and he had like a right-hand man named Malachi that was like the Riker to his really fucked up Picard. And he was an angry boy. So I'm think what we're supposed to, we've got like little Alice in Wonderland here, but I think we're supposed to sort of assume this. Isaac is the little girl, and that's supposed to be Malachi. And I kind of like Flannel Girl, to be honest, because like Malachi was a lot. Malachi was a whole lot.
Holy shit.
I know. While we're talking about Stephen King, one of the big theories is that He Who Walks Behind the Rose is actually an alias of Randall Flagg's. Look at his smoky intensity. He's also very spooky scary.
Gotcha.
I know. I personally, I don't believe that He Who Walks Behind the Rose and Randall Flagg are the same creature. I'll make this real brief. I think the plans of He Who Walks don't really seem to add up to like Flagg's big picture evil. Compared to the latter, the former feels more like a monster of the week. So I don't actually support this theory, even though it's super prevalent in Stephen King fandoms that they might be the same character, but whatever. I mean, the personalities don't really match up either. Flagg is like this giant attention whore narcissist, and He Who Walks sits in his cornfield all day, I don't know, commanding little children and making them suicide for shits and giggles. So it just doesn't mesh. It doesn't mesh for me between these two characters. Now, I like to fall in on more with the idea that He Who Walks is literally the Old Testament God, corrupted and just gone insane from evil. Now he's like super depressed and a little psychotic, and he lures little kids into cornfields like, okay, but don't tell your parents about my new cult. He also he makes a law where when the children hit 19 years old, they have to sacrifice themselves to him. And yet it literally, it doesn't really seem to make any difference to He Who Walks, by the way, even though it's like this really big poignant thing about this cult. He makes this big deal about having to willingly sacrifice yourself on your 19th birthday, but then one of the kids does something dumb to piss him off, and he's like, well, now it's your 18th birthday, you fucking bitch. Which again lines up, I don't, he just seems to me like
Very
a very,
petty.
yeah, very petty, which lines up with
Just
like
like
my
the Old
more,
Testament God,
yeah, yeah, petulant and petty and childish, which kind of makes more sense to me. You know, I paid for your OnlyFans, you fucking slut. You just, I don't know, just kind of just works for me more. Now, as far as what this beautiful corn boy might actually look like, admittedly, the actual visuals for the monster when he appears in one of the movies is not especially. This would honestly, this would have been more terrifying. He doesn't actually look
Yes.
that. He doesn't actually look like this. What he actually looks like the one time we do glimpse him, I think in Children of the Corn 3 or 4. I forget which one it was. I don't even know what that are. Those like he's given me like a goofy mouth. He's like, oh, yuck.
Yeah. Not really sold very much, to be fair. It looks like a Jim Henson puppet.
It does. It's just it's got like a yuck face. The corn thing is scarier. Now we do get as far as what it might look like in relation to the original story, we do get a brief excerpt quote from the original. Bert saw something huge bulking up to the sky, something green with terrible red eyes the size of footballs, something that smelled like dried corn husks years in some dark barn. He began to scream, but he didn't scream long. So it's a pretty awesome, more like nature-based, incomprehensible demonic force, I think. Except for that one time, oh my god, he transformed himself into a teenage boy so he could screw like a traumatized teenage girl and get her pregnant. I swear to God, one of the most recent movies, what is it called? Isaac's Return. He takes on this form.
Oh my god.
Fucking asshole gels back his hair, orders himself like a leather jacket from Corn Amazon or something, puts on sunglasses, you know, boop, and fake trauma dumps all over her until she fucks him. Then he's like, lol, I'm he who walks behind the rose and you're pregnant, bye. And that's the last she sees of him. And that's it. Dad had to go buy some cigarettes at the corner store, son, bye. And he calls himself
God.
he calls himself Gabriel, by the way. Like it I don't know what the fuck the people that wrote this movie were thinking. It completely fucked any kind of mysticism about this spiritual deity evil thing in the court. Look at this guy. Fuck. So there you go. That's my little bit on He Who Walks Behind the Rose. Now, Minx is going to take us on a little trip. You got
Where
little.
are we going?
We're going to Violence Town, with a little feature called Zedukai. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Coffin Joe. There you go.
Yes.
Go for
We're
it.
going to talk about Coffin Joe. So, the best way to think of Coffin Joe is Brazil didn't really have any horror mascots. And a gentleman called Jose Mojica Marins, who sadly died fairly recently, actually, decided to create a horror icon for Brazilian cinema. And he created, he created Coffin Joe. He's called Coffin Joe colloquially, but he's never actually called Coffin Joe in the movies at any point. But that's what he is known as. You know what I mean?
That's like his. That's like his moniker or something.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
so. I guess so. Like, it's interesting. But anyway, I guess you could. He became like an icon of Brazilian cinema. Like, think of him as like the Brazilian Elvira or something like that. I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, that he had like guest appearances in. He has his main films, but he had guest appearances on TV and in documentaries, and he shows up to make cameos in other films as the character and all this kind of stuff. It's pretty crazy stuff. But anyway, the main trilogy, the Coffin Joe trilogy, we have the very first one, which is a pretty old film. In 1964, it came out, and it is shot entirely in black and white. The first one. It's called At Midnight I Take Your Soul, and from that title, you kind of expect maybe like a cheesy sort of melodramatic horror. It actually opens with like an old hag warning you, "Do not watch this film, for at midnight it will take your soul." You know what I mean? Like it's very cheesy, but actually it's an incredibly fucked up film, a really fucked up film. The character of Coffin Joe basically is looking for a bloodline to continue. He wants to continue his bloodline, and he needs to find the perfect woman to do that. Unfortunately for him, most women don't want to do that with him, so he basically goes around raping people
Why?
for the duration of the film. There's like like if people refuse, he'll rape them or kill them. Like he kills one woman with covering her with venomous tarantulas. He drowns people. He's basically just a terrible piece of shit, really. But initially, like, there's nothing supernatural about him. He's just like a guy, you know what I mean? Who's just a piece of shit, basically doing horrible stuff. Um, and but he kills one too many people, and the ghosts kind of get mad. The ghosts of the people he's killed.
Hmm.
Um, and essentially, at the end of the first film, he gets his comeuppance when he is ambushed. There's the poison tarantula scene, yes, where he is ambushed by the ghosts of his victims, and they find him dead on like the steps of like the crypt, in a shot that is always in my head because his eyes, are, like in Total Recall when they go on space and their eyes
They
are like
pop out.
yeah, it's like
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
but with like 60 special effects is the best way I can describe it.
It's just marbles taped to their eye sockets.
Yes.
That's yeah.
Yes. So the supernatural element comes in then. He comes back though, because he apparently survived that encounter despite having his eyes pulled halfway out his face. He's fine. And he's back in the second film, which is This Night I'll Possess Your Corpse. Which is interesting in lots of ways, but the main thing I'd like to point out about this film that makes it like probably one of the most striking visual films I've ever seen. So Joe goes to hell in this one because he's a terrible piece of shit, doing exactly the same sort of shit he was doing before.
Mhm.
He goes to hell, and there is a sequence in the movie which is mainly black and white, where they go to hell, and it is shot entirely in color. The hell sequence, which was pretty novel at the time. You didn't get films like in 50/50,
Hmm.
and there's just so much going on. There's like tits and asses and genitals like poking out the walls. There's just all this bizarre lights and things like that. It's just like one of the most colorful depictions of hell that I've ever seen. It's like as if hell was like a big disco and everyone was like kind of having a terrible time, but they're kind of like forced to go along with it anyway. It's the best way I can describe it. But yes, it's it's this portrayal of hell is probably one of my favorite things just about the series as a whole. Okay.
Mhm.
Um Anyway, after these two films, he became like this Brazilian icon of horror. Like I said, he like popped up in everything. Lovable Uncle Joe, your friendly neighborhood rapist.
That's
And
so weird.
like he was like made cameos in loads of things, like I said, like and the character became like fully ingrained. Initially, actually, so the Coffin Joe trilogy, the third film that was included would often be just one of the ones where he made a guest appearance, and they would market it as a trilogy with lots of different films in the third slot. That was until 2008 when they released a modern Coffin Joe film, which is the final part of the trilogy, and that's called Embodiment of Evil, and that is what is now known as like the third Coffin Joe film, basically. The end of the last film, like Joe, like has been in like a asylum, like a prison, like mental ward. You know what I mean, for like the
Mhm.
criminally insane. But it's okay because he's let out at the start of
Is it
Embodiment of
cured?
Evil. He's. I don't think so. He basically immediately goes back to what he did in the previous two films. The continuation of his bloodline is the number one priority. I guess like one of the things that is interesting about this film is some of the people he kills in this one you don't feel bad for because they're terrible people. He kills like a eugenicist at the start, this woman who's like basically trying to like make the perfect master race sort of thing, you know what I mean?
So it's like an anti-hero now.
Yeah, like well, it's a bit like the progression of Freddy Krueger in some ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, but like I mean, what he's doing is awful. Um, but in the end, anyway, this time, he is killed finally by a priest who pierces him through the heart with a large crucifix.
Of course.
His bloodline is continued because after he's dead, before rigor mortis sets in, this girl who's fallen in love with him fucks
What?
his corpse and gets his seed inside her.
Oh, there's
Uh,
someone for everyone.
yeah, and then she persuades other women to do the same. I don't know how long afterwards, like the cum would stay working in the body after it was dead, but at the funeral, there's like a bunch of pregnant women at the
Man,
end of the film that all have his seed
how do you
inside.
talk
So
your friends into that? I wonder.
yeah, so his plans all came true at the end of the final movie, because he gets all these women knocked up after he
Oh,
dies.
it's a happy ending.
A happy ending.
A happy ending.
I actually really recommend these films. Like, as long as you are tolerant, obviously, for like there is sexual assault and stuff in
Yeah.
them, and they're not nice films, right? But if you can tolerate it, like it's it's a ride,
Yeah.
and I think Poppin' Joe as a character is a really good like villain. You know, he is very good, and the guy who plays him is just excellent at like he put these almost together by himself to begin with. By the way, like he directed, he wrote, he starred, he did all this kind of stuff. He has more help by the final film because it has a much bigger budget, but like it was actually done by 20th Century Fox, the last film. Um,
Hmm.
but it's he has so much passion for the character, and he has like created this world of lore and stuff around this character that he portrays so well, and it's just excellent stuff. I really recommend them as a lesser known horror series.
Awesome. Well, speaking of the actor, actually, have you heard about this possible development?
I have not. Tell me, educate me. Is
Uh,
he gonna play
I,
Coffin Joe?
it might just be rumors at this point, but while I was looking up stuff like for images and stuff, I ran across some news saying that there might be some work on a sequel, and he might be in consideration for the role, which would be very strange. I don't
Actually,
know.
I've seen a there's a movie where Elijah Elijah Wood, right? Before we continue,
Yes, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Elijah Wood plays a serial killer actually in a
Was
movie that
that
I've seen.
Creep?
No, 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 it wasn't Creep.
Although he was a killer in that one too.
It might have been. There's one where he like makes people into mannequins. He's
I'm.
very good in it. It's
Mm.
really creepy. I can't remember the name of the movie though. Like it's really
You
fucked.
know, it's funny. He went from playing like wide-eyed Frodo to all these like he played Kevin in Sin City. Then
Mm,
now that they've got him doing all these villainous roles, I guess he's got the I don't know. Guess he's got the face for it or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
Maniac. That's the name of the film with the mannequins. There you
Maniac.
go.
Thank you. Yeah, I had heard. I haven't seen that one. I saw Creep because there's two
It's
different Creep
Creep is
movies.
very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the found footage Creep, the other one, right? Like there's like the found footage franchise Creep by what the fuck are they called? Blumhouse. Yeah,
I
Blumhouse.
don't think the one I saw was about a woman being chased by a crazy mutant in
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
subway
yeah, yeah.
tunnels. Is that it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Okay.
not the one. That's a British movie. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah. I know
love
the one
that
you're talking
one.
about.
That was good.
Yeah. I actually recommend the found footage movie Creep. It's about like this guy who hires a movie editor off Fiverr to film him making a movie, and it's just like he's just so fucking strange, and it just escalates.
Oh, is that the one
Uh,
in the wolf mask?
yeah, 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 yeah,
I've
yeah, yeah,
seen it. Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I've seen a few like that. All right, are you all good?
Yep, I'm all good.
All right, let's move on now into some dev spotlight for you today. Giving it up for some genuine effort. This is the Dame Developer Spotlight, of course. The
The
game
game
developer.
developer.
Yeah, that's how you really say it. We looked at the game. We looked at Kitty Horror Show last time. This time there's a dev with only one game under his belt, just one itty bitty little game. The developer's name is Changeling Interactive, and they're based out of Brisbane. So you can follow them on itch.io, on Game Jolt.
Australia isn't a real country. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, the game is all right. The game's not available on Steam, and the game in question is Whatever Happened to Ruth MacArthur. And I got to tell you, it's a real experience, a positive one. I think it's beautiful. It's got like a vibrant setting, great soundtrack, great narration, and I love games where you can like draw conclusions without them being like tunnel blasted down your fucking throat. And let me give you a brief example. Actually, speaking of the writing quality, all the instruments of the modern age are chords in his metal throat. All the glowing faces, the television screens are doors. I love writing stuff, writing like that. And the official
This was a
summary.
good game. I have
Yep.
played it, but I did check. I have played
You
this.
have played, yeah. I really, for some reason, it's like really stuck with me ever since. And it's described as an interactive narrative experience where you are in search of a missing woman who left, leaving only a trail of audio tapes behind her. And what you're doing, you're essentially slowly following in her footsteps as more information reveals that the missing woman to have evolved beyond humanity in embracing the god in this game. A horse god, by the way, a horsey looking god. But I swear, some of the more abstract descriptions that the game gives us relating to the horse god are genuinely very disturbing. It's well executed. And there's also like an unpacking of the human angle, the kind of state you must be in, what it must be. What must make you like so desperate to shuffle off the coil of life as you've known it? Like not even just commit suicide. Like you're going above and beyond, and like how much more desperate would someone have to be to so want to follow after you. And that was a great little subtle part of the game, what that infers about the relationship between the two women in the game. And as far as how gripping I found it, it was a lot, actually. You don't often get like an involved point of view from someone in the thick of transcending their humanity. Like that idea is usually like a looming threat, and you get screaming and blood and all that fun jazz, but you're never you never see the mental processes, hardly ever. And it's honestly one of the best games that I've played that conveyed this abstract state, this in between. And I think that's a real selling point for trying this game out and being able to draw conclusions without being spoon fed from both like a supernatural and a personal emotional angle. The game does that very, very well, taking you through the process of pre-horsecock worship and post-horsecock worship, which you want to take a guess what he originally held in his hand? Shocking. There was some.
I'm gonna go with a banana.
Yes, you're right. How did you guess? I mean,
I just can tell.
Yeah, I was trying to throw you off with his name being Horsecock. It's like, surely she'll say Horsecock, but no, it was actually a banana. I hope Horsecock has convinced you to play the game. That's all he wants, I think. So in closing, Dev, give us another one. I see you cryptic shit, Dev, dropping all kinds of hints about a continuation on their Twitter. It's happening again. Fucking right it is. Look how happy Horsecock is. He knows. All right. In closing, play Whatever Happened to Ruth MacArthur and keep an eye out for the Electric Grimoire. I guess that's next in the lineup for this, Dev. I know I'm going to be. I really loved it. All right. Next up, we have Pull Up a Chair. We've got a little bit of common ground to talk about. Minx is going to tell us some important difficulty and consequence are in gaming. All right, go for it.
So this is something I've wanted to talk about for a while, and I think it's a really fine line that horror really straddles a lot of the time. Okay, and that is difficulty and consequences, like you said. So when you're playing a game and you die, if there are no consequences to your character's death, like you say you instantly respawn, or a checkpoint a few seconds ago, or whatever, right?
Bioshock.
The flow of the game is not interrupted. You can continue on your way. But there is a chance, if there are no consequences to death, that you won't fear death. You'll just be like, oh, just kill me. You know what I mean? Like something that comes down to you. And it can make the threat of the enemy seem way less significant than it would do if there was more to lose. So I guess the real question, and this can be extended to chat as well, like, is it really important to like balance this? Like, if a game is too difficult, for example, in horror, can it also have the same effect? So let's say I'm playing a game like Granny, right? Where if you fuck up, she gets you, and you start the next day, and you fuck up 5 times, and then you start all over again, right? So let's say you die like 20 times, 30 times learning to play Granny or whatever for the first time or whatever. And does that mean that the impact of how scary she is? I mean, I don't think she's scary anyway, but like, let's say that I'm like, a Zoomer playing a mobile phone game.
You're super scared, yeah.
I'm super scared of Granny.
Yeah.
Do things lose their impact? Like an example that we've got on screen here is White Day as well. White Day has the janitor relentlessly pursuing you to the point where it's absolutely fucking ridiculous. Like, he is constantly on your ass, and he cheats, and he he seems to home in on your location even if you're not like making any noise. And he does things like turn the lights on in rooms you're in and fucks you over. And it's just like, when I did the playthrough of this recently for YouTube, I had to cut out nearly 2 hours of just being chased by the janitor, of nothing else happening except him running after me, and then me crouching down in the room while he wandered around for 10 minutes looking for me. And it's so obnoxious, and it removes, for me, a huge amount of the scares in that game. Like, it has not aged well, and it's mainly because of the janitor. If he was like a less continuous threat, it would, to me, add to the atmosphere. Okay. But then you have stuff like Puppet Combo on the other side of things, right? And in a lot of Puppet Combo games, they're a lot shorter for a start than White Day. Okay, you can probably beat Nun Massacre in like 90 minutes if you know what you're doing, right? We're talking specifically about his like games where you're chased. So let's talk about like Night Ripper, Babysitter Bloodbath, None, like which you have on screen, all the ones you have on screen essentially. Stay Out of the House.
I came prepared.
And the Easter Ripper, which is really fucked, by the way. Does that, in his cases, his games are shorter, and the killer will be, if the killer kills you in a lot of puppet combo games, you go back to the start. No, you don't just die. You have to start the entire thing all over again. Not always. Like I know, like the Easter Ripper game, what the fuck it's called? What's it called? Murder House
Mhm.
has like saves and things like that. But like Night Ripper doesn't. And like the tension is palpable when you're like, holy shit, I could lose like an hour of gameplay if this fucking thing sees me. You know,
Mhm.
like if they kill me, and like I don't know if I like that or not, and it's something that very much like, you know, leaves me conflicted. Okay, because I really liked, for example, this is slightly off topic, well, not off topic, but not of the developers we listed, but the Chillers Art games, Akamanto and Yuki Ono, right?
Oh yeah.
They both restart from scratch if you die. Okay, there's no
And are
saves.
not
It's just that.
easy.
I've beaten both of them all
Mm.
the way through, and I really enjoyed getting the true endings on both of them. I played them both multiple times to get the true endings, right?
Nice.
The problem is I was okay with those, right? I was fine with those. I beaten Nun Massacre as well. I haven't beaten Night Ripper because I died at the end and I was like, I don't want to fucking do this anymore. Like, so where does the line of frustration at death meet the line of fear for death? Like, it's
May
a
I
really, really difficult thing, if that makes sense, to nail down.
As far as like my own opinion goes, I don't consider that the same kind of like if I'm playing a horror game, I don't want the fear to come from the anxiety of thinking that I have to restart and waste my time. That means I'm not scared of the thing that's chasing me or whatever. I'm not scared of anything in game, and it's kind of an anxiety that isn't as fun. As a result, I don't enjoy it, so I don't really consider that to be a very good, I don't know, mechanic for a game. I don't know.
Mhm. No, I understand that. I understand that viewpoint. Like sometimes I find it really adrenaline pumping
Mm-hmm.
to you know that thought process. But other times, especially if I die, I'm like, fuck this. This is bullshit. I'm never playing this again. Fuck that. So I guess it's literally just down to whether or not I die or not. You know, like
Yeah.
like if I die early on, that's fine. But if I die like moments from getting the true ending, I'm gonna be like wanting to put my fist through my screen. You know.
You know, like the
So
most
yeah,
common like thing I could parallel to was back when I played Slender the Arrival and you had to turn on all the generators in that little
fucking
closed
hate
stuff.
Slender the
Yeah,
Arrival. Yeah,
and
that
like
that bit was awful in particular.
I wanted to die. I got all the generators on. Got away from him. I got in the elevator. I started going up and I fell through the floor and died.
Oh no.
That's why, I don't like that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just feels like it feeds into that more, which is fine if you like. Honestly, if you find a way to get the right kind of tension, enjoyment out of it, there's more, good for you. I wish I could. I hate it.
It really bothers me sometimes, but other times it doesn't bother me at all, and I don't know where the line lies. That's the problem, you know? Like,
Yeah,
I don't know if it's literally just if I fail or succeed is the line, because if so, that's a really unhealthy approach to game design, as far
yeah,
as I'm concerned. Like, that's not good, because I should be feeling like the anxiety regardless, you know?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay. Let me
Yeah, I
see.
think that's all I've got to say on that one.
You good? Okay, we'll move on. Next on the show, Minx is going to take us through a little podcast feature. We've got a podcast
Yes.
spotlight tonight, and I'm excited because I actually, I had no idea about this until you mentioned it to me during our call, and then I looked it up, and now I'm like super intrigued. So these are the Magnus archives. Take it away.
Yes. Well, I'll just read the summary here on screen because that makes sense to
Hmm.
summarize it. Join Jonathan Sims. He's a newly appointed head archivist of the Magnus Institute as he attempts to bring seemingly neglected collection of supernatural statements up to date by converting them to audio and supplementing them with a follow-up work from his small but dedicated team. Individually, the statements are unsettling. Together, they begin to form a picture that is truly horrifying because they look into the depths of the archives. Something starts to look back. Now, this is the podcast that I really like, but I'm very torn on at the same time. I will say that.
Oh,
So when the Magnus Archives begins, it is very much a, I guess, almost SCP style one-shot monster of the week type show. Okay,
nice.
so you got Jonathan, and he'll be reading. He'll be like he's got like a written statement in front of him, and he is reading it into a microphone. Is the premise of the show for the early episodes. And there may be another character that joins him and passes comment on like the what's going on, but mostly it's just him reading into a mic and reading the statement out loud of what this person has witnessed. Okay.
Hmm.
and they're very well written and very creepy. And it also has like this audio effect of him, like the recording being made, if that makes sense. Like
Like the sound effects to make it sound like
yeah,
he's talking into a.
yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
So,
Yeah.
and it makes it like even more unsettling. And each of the, I would say, even the first like 100 episodes of the podcast are like this. Like they're like very much tuned around.
Shit, I
This
know
is
what
an
I'm
event.
binging. Damn.
This is an event, and this is the thing happening.
Oh.
I will give some examples of some of my like favorite like episodes. Most of them are really early on. The very first episode, in my opinion, is still one of the best. It's called Anglerfish, um, and it is about it's a statement from somebody who has witnessed a creature that appears to be a living anglerfish walking around the streets in Scotland. Okay, but instead of having a light over its head, what it does is it has a human body hanging
What the?
from a like anglerfish type thing, and it will stand on the edge of the shadows, um, and people will go and investigate it because it moves oddly, like swaying side to side. It'll be like a
Right,
bit of
because
an
it's
uncanny
hanging.
movement.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it looks like just an average person just moving maybe slightly odd. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people will walk towards it without realizing it's being puppeteered by this other entity in the shadows. And then it will lure people in. It skins its victims. It then taxidermizes them and uses them as servants to lure in more people.
That's
Um,
awesome. What the fuck?
yeah, it turns them into what they call meat waxworks in the series because this is actually a recurring theme.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's pretty fucked up that whole thing, and I really think it's like a fascinating creature. I like the concept of something. An anglerfish obviously lures its light to lure people in, but what if it was luring in a human? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And things like that, and I find that fascinating, and I love the horror imagery behind that, if that makes sense. Like I just think it's excellent.
No, I totally
Um,
understand. I mean, I'm a huge fan of we featured Knife Point Horror podcast last time, and they do the same in many of their stories, like with the sound effects and the and some of the stuff there, and it's creative in its own way. This sort of content really appeals to me. I'm gonna have to check it out after.
I'm gonna do one more episode. I won't go through too many, but
Hmm.
another one of my favorite episodes. I think it's episode 6. I might be slightly wrong. Is called Squirm. And there's actually quite a lot of episodes are based around this particular entity. But basically, the series has a preoccupation with worms and worms tunneling into things and leaving like triophobia style holes and
Oh,
things like that. And it's really gross. And in this particular instance, a guy who provides a statement basically says he goes to a nightclub. He meets a cute girl who, like, he thinks is really attractive.
hmm.
And she says, do you want to fuck? And they start going back to his apartment. And he notices that she's behaving pretty weirdly. Like, she's looking around all the time. She's like scratching her skin, like a weird amount. You know what I mean? Like scratching the skin till it bleeds, sort of like
Yeah.
not healthy behavior. But he's like, whatever, I'm gonna get laid. You know what I mean? And he gets back to the apartment, and she basically just melts into a sea of maggots.
Does he still?
He sets fire to it, and it burns
Okay.
down burns everything. So there's no evidence left, and they
So-
actually dismissed this case early on as like, well, there was no evidence left, so it probably didn't happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But later on, there are many more cases based around this type thing of like worms burrowing into people and becoming their bodies, and like almost
Holy
like
shit.
where like worms like bonding together to make a creature that looks like a human and things like that. Um, the series does go off the rails a bit, in my opinion, because the big thing is all these different entities that are being chronicled fit into different categories of different demonic gods, essentially. And we even find out that the archive itself, the Magnus Archives itself,
Mhm.
is a demonic entity, like called the Watcher, and them like giving it this information, transcribing it, is making it more powerful because it likes to watch. You know what I mean?
Oh, I love that.
And it's cool, but it kind of gets swallowed by its own lore. Because like the later episodes have them like running around, like fighting different demonic entities themselves, rather than narrating these stories and things like that. And it's far less fun when it becomes like slightly actiony than when it was just like about the narration.
Oh, that's too bad. There's a few shows and stories and stuff that end up falling to that when they try to expand outside of the like format that they've been using, but it's like a great format. Why you got to ruin it?
Yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
has finished now, so like the whole series, like all of it is there to watch now. They've
Mm.
actually been doing a thing now where they've been doing some one shots again, like, and they're calling it like Lost Archives, like you know what I mean, like other like stories that they found from the past and stuff.
Hmm.
So those new ones are pretty good actually as well, and they're like very much like the earlier episodes. But it starts off like an SCP reading and ends up like a radio drama, and I wasn't a big fan of like past a certain point. It just got like, okay, this is getting a bit silly.
Yeah, that's too bad. But well, I'm definitely, you got me interested in the first half of it at least.
Yeah, it's
It
very good the
sounds
first
really
half.
good. Yeah. All right, you good?
Yep.
All right, moving on then. Sit back, relax, because Minx and I are going to read to you, just gently lull you to sleep with some choice SCP entries. This episode, we have SCP 2662, aka Aya Aya, Cthulhu Fuck Off. I love that. You may begin, Researcher Minx. Go ahead.
Okay. SCP-2662, Object Class, formerly Euclid, now classified as Keter. Special Containment Procedures. Containment of SCP-2662 is primarily focused on preventing unauthorized entry into its containment area. For this purpose, on-site Task Force Tau, belligerent bodyguards, has been organized to guard SCP-2662's containment unit and keep track of new religious followings, focusing on the worship of SCP-2662. Task Force Tau 9 is, and this is blanked out, to use non-lethal methods when dealing with an attempt of unauthorized entry, and is now authorized to use lethal force if necessary. All members of Task Force Tau 9 are to be tested biannually for cognito-hazardous influences. As containment of SCP-2662 is completely voluntary, it is currently contained in a large humanoid containment unit with the standard safety measures for low-risk humanoids detailed in document 099A-KA. Additionally, SCP-2662 is allowed one copy of a daily newspaper of its choice, a computer, and requested computer games totaling no more than $50 every month.
Description: SCP-2662 is a cognitive hazardous entity approximately 4 meters in height and 200 kilograms in weight. SCP-2662 appears to be in a vaguely humanoid shape, with approximately 20 additional muscular hydrostats in similar structure to cephalopod limbs attached to its back. These limbs are fully functional and allow SCP-2662 to perform up to 10 different tasks at once. SCP-2662's primary anomalous effect only occurs after long-term repeated exposure, usually by being in the same room as or interacting daily with SCP-2662. Subjects exposed to SCP-2662 for a period of 6 months or longer are at risk of becoming acutely aware of SCP-2662's wants or needs and are compelled to fulfill them. They may also suffer from a quasi-psychotic episode when under stress. SCP-2662 is unable to affect humans that have a 2 or higher MARS, that is, Mind-Affecting Resistance Scale score. SCP-2662's secondary anomalous effect is the spontaneous generation of religious followings at an approximate rate of at least once a month. This generation is involuntary and causes SCP-2662 notable distress. Religious groups generated by SCP-2662 usually focus on attempting to break into its containment unit in order to perform various rituals that are violent and/or sexual in nature. These groups tend to be highly organized and appear to adapt to each failed attempt, despite there being generally no contact between different generated religious followings. Below is an incomplete log of incidents relating to SCP-2662. A full list can be found in Document 2662-I.
Incident 2662-7. On blank blank 2003, a religious group known as Toward Containment. 2250. SCP-2662 is seen taking a shower in preparation for sleep. There is a loud noise as the previously undiscovered explosives are detonated underneath the center of SCP-2662's containment unit. 2251. 5 injured civilians climb out the hole left by the detonation. SCP-2662 leaves the shower to investigate the noise. 2252. Agents Blank and Blank notify Task Force Tau 9 of a breach into containment. They attempt to suppress the initial 5 civilians unsuccessfully as 5 more arrive with weapons. 2256. After a brief struggle, agents Redacted and Redacted are pinned down and tied with the rope by the civilians. The injured civilians approach SCP-2662. The uninjured civilians stab their hands with knives, masturbate, and then draw unknown symbols on the walls with a mix of sexual fluids and blood. 2258. SCP-2662 speaks. Oh, come on, man. That's not really sanitary. Or necessary. SCP-2662 appears to gag upon witnessing the symbols. The injured civilian successfully corner SCP-2662 in the shower stall. 2259. The injured civilians are seen squeezing blood out their wounds and rubbing it onto SCP-2662 while singing. SCP-262 says, "Jesus Christ, stop, please, I just took a shower." 2300. Task Force Tower arrived to pick up. Task Force Town 9 arrived at SCP-2662's containment unit. Task Force Town 9 managed to suppress all civilians successfully and proceed to move SCP-2662 to temporary unit until repairs can be completed.
Incident 2662-13. On Redacted 2005, a religious group known as the Betrothed successfully broke into SCP-2662's containment. SCP-822. SCP-2662 is seen eating breakfast and reading a newspaper. 824. Security officers stationed at SCP-2662's containment unit enter with a researcher. The researcher can be seen carrying a piglet. 825. SCP-2662. Can I help you? 826. Researcher blank. Oh, our Lord, please accept this innocent suckling swine, freshly orphaned from slaughter of both mother and father. May its soul of loss fuel you. Researcher blank proceeds to castrate the piglet in front of SCP-2662 and place the testes on SCP-2662's food. 828. SCP-2662. No thanks. I'm full. Go home. Your Lord is pleased with the offering. Task Force Tau 9 is notified of a breach into containment. 829. SCP-2662 attempts to read the newspaper. Researcher blank slits the piglet's neck and throws it onto the table. Blood spatters the newspaper. 830. SCP-2662. What? Look, can you go read a Bible or something? You really, really need it. SCP-2662 puts the newspaper down. The accompanying security officers execute Researcher blank via gunshot to the head. They then begin consuming her. 832. SCP-2662 leaves the scene to vomit in a toilet. 834. Task Force Tau 9 arrived to move SCP-2662 to a temporary containment unit and detain the guards. After further investigation, all involved personnel were civilians posing as personnel. It is unknown as to the whereabouts of the actual researcher and security officers.
Incident 2662-78. On blank 2014, an unnamed religious group consisting of D-Class personnel and 2 members of Task Force Tau 9 successfully broke into SCP-2662's containment. SCP-2662 was redesignated as Keter upon further review of Incident 2662-78. 407. SCP-2662 could be seen sleeping in its bed. 410. The entirety of Task Force Tau 9 is called for an off-site mission against orders. Task Force Tau 9 chooses to leave 4 of its members behind to keep a watch on SCP-2662. 415. 2 of the remaining members tackle and lock the other 2 in an unused containment unit. 420. A cargo truck arrives on site Redacted where SCP-2662 is kept. 425. The 2 remaining members unload the cargo of D-Class personnel. They lead the D-Class personnel to Task Force Tau 9's armory. 430. The D-Class and the remaining members arm themselves from the armory and break into SCP-2662's containment unit. 431. SCP-2662 is roused. Several D-Class personnel guard the exit to the containment unit as well as the corresponding hallway. SCP-2662. What? Are we moving? I'm not scheduled until next week. 435. Agents Redacted and Redacted begin carving symbols into their Oh, sorry, I missed one there. 436. SCP-2662 attempts to alert Task Force Tau 9 to no response. 437. Agents Redacted and Redacted begin carving symbols into the buttocks and thighs of the undressed D-Class personnel. The D-Class personnel begin to engage in group sex after being carved. 439. What the fuck? Seriously? Now? Look, seriously, can you go find another god? I hear Buddhism is all the rage. D-Class 99304 attempts to pull SCP-2662 into the group. The fuck? Stop! Seriously, Lord commands you and all that stuff to cut this shit out. 440. All D-Class personnel currently engaged in sex cease their movements. They all turn to stare at SCP-2662. Task Force Tau 9 arrive at the off-site meeting point, only to be told no such mission exists. Task Force Tau 9 begin moving back to site Redacted. 441. Oh, thank God, I can control you guys now, kinda. Maturity's happening right on time. Good to know. Okay, tell me what the fuck is going on here. 442. Agent Redacted. After the blood birthing ritual, we're going to take you to the sacred chambers where we, our families, and our lineage will remain in your service for all eternity. The people here cage you. With us, you may go wherever you please. 445. SCP-2662. You must be kidding. I can leave whenever I want. I just have to ask. Besides, the D-class personnel begin to continue engaging in group sex. Seriously, stop! You're all fucking disgusting. I'm not even ready to settle down with a cult yet. I'm only like 200 years old. I'm barely legal. 446. Agent Redacted. Do you really think the Foundation will let you go if you asked? Well, you can certainly ask. You'll be sorely disappointed, though, my lord. 448. SCP-26662 says, yeah, well, if it turns out to be the case, I can just wait until I'm strong enough to break out. In the meantime, I'm going to sit in the bathroom and wait. The rest of you can do this stupid blood orgy. SCP-2662 moves to the shower stall and turns on the water. It sits in the shower stall for the remainder of the incident. Footnotes. SCP-2662 can only affect approximately 5% of the human population and 2% of the Foundation personnel. It is therefore considered a low-risk cognito-hazard.
I guess that influence will grow once it's like fully matured or whatever. Is the
Yeah, I guess so.
implication.
And anyway, that was SCP-2662 by Soulless Singularity.
There you go. Nice one. Kind of a different look at Cthulhu for a change.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, and that is the show proper. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. We are going to work out when we're going to have the next shows and let you guys know. And if you've got any feedback, I've put in the channels on my Discord for like any suggestions. If you want to throw in like stuff you want us to read, because we don't have to just read SCP stuff, right? So
No, we can do other stuff too.
yeah, we can do other stuff. I've already, and there's people already posting like some true crime they want us to look at, or some of the more local based legends, like what you were telling me with the urban legend around where you were.
It'd be good to do some folklore things. That could be interesting.
Yeah, I think that'd be great actually. They're already dropping stuff in there that like I don't even recognize some of the stories. It's really interesting. So we'll have a fresh look at this stuff. All right, that's it. Thank you so much. See you next time. Good night. Bye.
Night, guys.
Bye.